are these people?
All right. Should we get started on our first story?
I think so.
All right. So, as I said, our first story tonight features Bernie a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of shows how much of a cuck he really is.
Right.
So, this is an exclusive interview that was done by Truthout, by Brian Bean. Never
Okay.
heard of this guy before.
Me either.
But he interviewed a parliament member in the Israeli government. Now, let me ask you: is it Knesset or Knesset?
Knesset.
Do you have it? What is it?
Knesset with the K.
Knesset. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if within the Hebrew they pronounce the K, but anyway. So Brian did this interview with this Knesset member. Who says Bernie Sanders ignored both of my appeals for ceasefire. Israeli Parliament member Ofer Kasif is urging Bernie Sanders and other U.S. progressives to pressure Israel towards ceasefire. So you gotta get rid of that, please.
Yep.
So let's see what he gets into. In less than 2 months, Israel has killed more civilians than Russia killed in Ukraine in 2 years. Israeli parliament member Ofer Kasif told me recently, expressing horror at Israel's ongoing onslaught against the Palestinian civilians trapped under Israel's relentless attacks in Gaza. The Israeli government's response to the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas has nothing to do with the well-being of Israelis, added Kasif, who has represented the Democratic Front for Peace and Equality Hadash Ta'al coalition in the Israeli Knesset since 2019. Rather, it has everything to do with revenge and preserving this fascist government in power, he said.
Yep.
In this exclusive interview for Truthout, Kasif, who has faced formal backlash since October for decrying what he has described as the Israeli forces' ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, analyzes the roots of the Israeli government's seeming disregard for the Israeli prisoners held by Hamas, and discusses his efforts to persuade progressives within the U.S. Democratic Party to pressure the leaders of the Israeli government to agree to a ceasefire.
Got it. There it goes.
So this is Brian, who's speaking here. The recent temporary cessation of bombing and the prisoner exchange have concluded. Can you talk about the current moment in Israeli politics and a little bit about some of the politics surrounding the families of the hostages? I know there's contradictions and divisions among the families and some conflicts with the Netanyahu government. For example, Israeli Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir was on the floor of the Knesset chastising families when they spoke out against the attempt to reinstate the death penalty. And this is offered here. The Netanyahu government doesn't really care about its own citizens. The assault on Gaza has nothing to do with security. It has nothing to do with the well-being of Israelis. It has everything to do with revenge, a realization of the subjugation plan, and preserving this fascist government in power. Those are the real interests behind this assault. If one wants to really support the Israelis and the security of Israel as a state and its citizens, it must do everything to assist us in dissolving this government, because this government is an enemy of the people of Israel and, of course, an enemy to the Palestinians.
Yep.
There is a division in the Israeli society and, of course, within the parliament. As you alluded to, Ben-Gvir and his thugs don't care about the lives of anyone. They are Messianic. Before the massacre, some of them even said so in one way or another, some very explicitly. Orit Struk, the Minister of National Settlements and National Missions with Bezalel Smotrich's, sorry, these names, religious Zionist party, said that the land of Israel is acquired by suffering. And in my view, she sees the Israeli hostages way too, merely instruments in the way of redemptions. She initially opposed any move to negotiate on behalf of hostages.
So fuck those hostages, I guess.
Yes, and we've
Okay.
seen that
Over and over and
uh,
over and over again.
over again, especially more recently in what was that Israelis
I mean,
uh,
don't look into the
accident.
Hannibal directive. Don't look into that because
Right.
that's definitely fuck the hostages. But you know,
Um,
um,
so anyway, Kashir continues. They don't care about human beings at all. Those are messianic fanatics, bigots. They remind me of the worst of your US evangelicals. They have very similar views. It's not coincidence. They are supported by them. They have very similar views. They don't care about people, about the lives of human beings. They just care about their messianic nightmare. That division exists in the government, in the Knesset, and in Israeli society at large. A vast majority of the Israelis see the most important objective is wanting to see the hostages back.
okay. I mean, this is the lie they've told them that that's what this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are three groups in the Knesset that reflect divisions. There's a group of the Messianic right in the Knesset who voted against the ceasefire because for them the lives of people are not important, so they don't care about the hostages. Of course, they will not say it in that sense. But you see the situation you described with Ben Gurier and others in this terrible, disgusting party in what he said in the meeting at the Knesset with the families of the hostages. They are a tiny group, excuse me, relatively, but unfortunately, they control the government. The other group, which I'm a part of, has called for ceasefire for many reasons. One of which is because the lives of the hostages are more important than revenge. A few weeks ago, I tweeted that if the government of Israel would love its citizens more than it hates Palestinians, the hostages would have been at home ages ago.
Yep.
I totally believe that and repeat it. So our group calls for ceasefire, and of course, many of the families of the hostages support this for that reason. Even many families of those who were brutally murdered by Hamas support this. I admire them for the mental power that they do not allow the rage they feel justly to overwhelm them rather.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I wait. Is this the right one?
Yeah.
Wait, no, I went.
By the way,
Here we go.
I fixed the Zoom.
Okay,
I fixed it.
all right. So let me.
I did it by completely installing a different Zoom plugin. But
Okay,
yes.
all right. They don't let the rage become revenge. They support the ceasefire, and many of them support the ending of the occupation and reaching a just peace with the Palestinians. They don't let the rage control them and still support peace, Palestinian independence, and ceasefire. This is just one part of the reason because, of course, most importantly, we oppose the violence and call for a ceasefire, also because of the unprecedented death toll and catastrophic destruction in Gaza. But the release of the hostages is also of primary value. This is our group, so to speak. We call for a ceasefire and for the total release of hostages all. That means release of all Palestinian prisoners and hostages in order to release all Israeli hostages and prisoners who are in Gaza. There is another group that thinks that it is possible to continue with the assault on Gaza at the same time to release the hostages. This is contradictory. Excuse me. Um, this is contradictory. Two ideas that are mutually exclusive. If you want to release the hostages, you must stop the fire and exchange prisoners.
Contradictory.
Tory. I cannot read. Anyway, if
Uh-huh.
you don't do that, the chance of the hostages being able to leave and get back home healthy peace are getting smaller by the hour. That's something we'll never accept. We want them to come back home and live a good life. That's the obligation of the government. Unfortunately, the government time and time again proves that it doesn't follow its obligations. It
Nope.
doesn't do what it has to do. We continue to try to pressure it to do what it has to do and has an obligation towards its citizens and residents. But time and time again, the government neglects them, to say the least. It sacrifices them.
Yep.
So, Brian, in regard to the prisoner exchange, I wonder if you could talk about what you think the calculations of the Netanyahu government were. Because it's interesting that they went from declaring total war, which is still ongoing, but it seems like a step back for them to pause, to do some exchange of prisoners, and then go back to it again. What's happening there on the level of the state, and how do you make sense of that? So this is Kashir. Netanyahu is not interested in anything but his own good. That's the only thing that drives him. He knows that as long as this trial goes on, he knows that eventually the chances for him to be put behind bars is very high.
Yeah.
He is facing 3 serious charges, and it looks almost certain that he will go to jail. So we've
Hopefully.
mentioned this.
Yeah.
We've mentioned this weeks ago.
Yeah.
That this is so really Netanyahu really essentially pushing all of this is essentially because he's on trial right now for corruption in government. So
Mm.
this is the perfect little distraction to have people not think about it or talk about it. And then honestly, I don't think we've even talked about it. I know we've mentioned it long ago, but I don't think even people in independent media have mentioned that this
No,
is
it's
the
one of the many
primary reason
things
why
that
Danielle is really pushing this war.
Yeah. Well, and it's also timely because we're willing to support it. We've got to get out of Ukraine. So, there's a lot of things that line up as far as, there's a lot of puzzle pieces in this game. So they all have their own motivations. Some of them align, but, plus this has been going on forever. It's just, you might as well make it loud now as opposed to quietly. So, especially if you need a distraction. And I don't know, every president that's ever you want to get reelected, start a war. Same thing with Bibi. So,
well, except for Bibi, is that I would argue
keep power at
because it
least.
just seems right, but it seems just given what what we see in media is that it appears that most Israelis are for what Netanyahu is doing when that's probably not the case.
No.
If anything, it seems like the majority are against what he's doing.
No, they protested him last time he was in office. They kicked him out.
Right.
And then they reelected him because, it's very similar to election coming up. For us, it's going to be similar things. So, but yeah. So,
but anyway, let's continue. This is Kashir
Truthout?
continuing.
Okay.
Yep. I said before that he doesn't care about the lives of Israelis. That's true. But he doesn't care. This is Netanyahu. But he doesn't care about anything else but his own political survival. And as long as he thinks, given the polls and whatever, that the public wants revenge to continue, he will continue with the war, with the murder of innocent civilians in Gaza. In the media, he kept saying that we are going to eliminate Hamas, we're going to destroy them. But once he saw the polls, he realized that for many Israelis, the release of the hostages was one of the main goals.
Yeah.
So he changed his behavior to try to increase his popularity. At the moment, he isn't succeeding, as whatever he does is not popular, and rightly so. I'm happy about this because he has been accused by many families of the victims of being guilty. Not only responsible, but guilty in the killing and kidnapping of those people himself. And I totally agree with them. Netanyahu simply changes his mind from one side to another according to what he thinks the public wants and thinks. That's the only thing that drives him. Not security, not well being of the citizens, not the lives, not anything more than what he thinks may keep him in power. That's the reason he changes his mind. Total God complex here. and he may do it time and time again, however the wind is blowing. So Brian asks, can you talk about the role of Biden and in the United States in all of this? Response. We all know that in the United States, Biden is under a lot of pressure from the Democratic Party and even by the potential voters of the Democratic Party, and we are less than 1 year from before elections. Biden knows he may lose those elections. I read recently in the New York Times that a huge amount of so-called orthodox Democratic voters are now saying they are not going to vote in the presidential elections because they will not vote for Biden because of his support for the genocidal assault in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that Biden is aware of that and he thinks about that. In that sense, he must make the most vague impression that he is trying to calm down the situation in general and the government of Israel. I'm very disappointed with the so called progressives within the Democratic Party as they are not raising their voices enough. I appealed twice to Bernie Sanders, who never answered, and
Oh,
others, I don't hear them enough. On the other hand, I am very happy about Jewish Voice for Peace, who are doing tremendous, wonderful work. I salute them and really admire what they've been doing.
so
I'm afraid that,
Bernie, Bernie fucking up again, getting direct, like, you know, like literally this guy's sending him letters. Please do something.
yeah.
And Bernie's like, nah. So,
Well, I wouldn't say no. I think he's starting to about ceasefire now, but it's still kind of tepid. And
yes.
then with the squad, like they call for a ceasefire, sure, but a lot of their voting recently has not really matched kind of the rhetoric that they're saying towards the ceasefire now.
Yeah.
So, and as I keep saying, really we should be calling for a divestment of Israel. Like that should be the ultimate thing. But the
Mm-hmm.
ceasefire literally is just really the compromise in the past
Yeah.
because there's no stopping.
It's get rid of the, Jewish state at this point, and let them make some new systems. That's not
Right.
a religious government. But I don't know, give it back to the Palestinians, see what they do with it. But
All right. So we'll continue. I'm afraid that there is no real attempt, neither by the Biden administration, the EU, nor by Arab countries, to put pressure on the government of Israel. The consequence of this is that the government of Israel continues with this terrible carnage. This proves that the world states don't really care, as there have been no real practical steps taken. Rhetoric is not enough. I'm afraid that the future is very gloomy as far as Gaza is concerned. We're talking about a terrible death toll. In less than 2 months, Israel has killed more civilians than Russia killed Ukraine in 2 years. The destruction is a
wait,
total
hold up.
destruction.
Go fucking back. Read that shit again. Like,
In less than 2 months, Israel has killed more civilians than Russia killed in Ukraine in 2 years.
where the fuck are all those people at that like yelled about, the occupying force of Russia, yada yada, Putin's a madman, yada yada. 2 years they've killed less civilians than in 2 months. What was that? What it said? 2 months?
Yeah.
How? With all of our military technology that we're giving them, how?
Well,
This is
you can
deliberate.
argue.
It's no other.
But you can argue that if Russia did what
Mhm.
they could do,
There'd be sanctions. There'd be like
right.
loads of crap.
Yeah, well, no, we'll be in World War III right now.
Yeah.
So like, but with Israel, it's okay because we're funding this. So, and then I don't think it's really fair that, Kasif is saying the Arab countries are not getting involved. They don't want to. I will argue they don't want to get involved, especially like Egypt, Syria,
Hmm.
Lebanon, Jordan, because they know
Meanwhile,
that, if
in
we get
Yemen, like they're fucking putting their like money's on the table for Yemen, right? Ain't no boats going through that canal right there, is there? Why do you think they want that
right,
big Gurion so much? Like, because now they got to go all the way around the Cape, bro. What's down there, Collin? You should know what's down there. Particular group
South
of
Africa,
people that might become captains now. If you look at me, I'm captain now, right? Like those motherfuckers, they're down there. Like boats now don't like going down those fucking regions because the Somalis and not just them, they're just the ones with the name, right? But there's plenty of pirating all the way along that coast, especially past the Cape, which is notoriously difficult to go through. Let's talk about that. Like around the Cape, around Cape Horn is difficult. Like it is not easy travel. So like there is good sea through that little strait. You know, like good luck. So that's going to affect lots of supply lines coming up. I
yeah,
guarantee you, if they keep that up, which is why we're willing to go to fucking war with Yemen right now. That like it's literally they're out there stomping on both those flags. They got their army out there stomping on the Israeli flag and the American flag. In one fell little march, they're marching right on over those. So, okay, like y'all wanted World War III, here it comes.
yeah.
So, like, uh, yeah, I mean, but vote harder. So,
This is the
because
most election of our lifetime.
it's the most election of our lifetime, Colin. So, you know,
But anyway, let's continue. The destruction is a total destruction, especially in the north. Unfortunately, not only there anymore. And as you said before, they are in the south. They are bombing the southern parts of Gaza, where more than 50% of the people living in Gaza are refugees multiple times over.
mm,
The infrastructure is totally damaged. I mean, in ruins. No water, no fuel, no medicine, no hospitals are operating. People are starving there. Literally, people are starving. If Israel continues because the world allows it, these crimes will compound. One example is that the people of Gaza are going to suffer from the spreading of diseases. One, one Israeli ex-general, Gior Eliand, who is supposedly a modest guy, said that part of the policy and strategy of Israel must be spreading diseases in Gaza to bring victory closer. So,
mm-hmm.
ethnic cleansing much?
Yep. I mean, almost like putting poison in water supplies that they have to admit to 20 years later. Um, you know, I mean, we've talked about their desalination problem, right? Like, you know, there's no fresh water. Like they're controlling that. Like it's siege warfare. It's I'm surprised they're not catapulting plague bodies in there. You know? So I mean, they've talked about fucking doctors are having to do amputations without anesthesia on children. Like that are hungry and emaciated and no food. Like how many you think make it through that ordeal, Collin? Like like odds are low on that surgery, friend. So yeah.
Uh, um, so anyway, that may happen because there's no way on. The only way to prevent it is to stop the and to immediately allow everyone, like the World Health Organization, the Red Cross, and all the relevant organizations, to get into Gaza and immediately treat people. And of course, infrastructure must be completely reconstructed and so on. I'm very pessimistic about the near future in the short run. I do not see in the short run how the situation of Gaza is going to improve based on the will of the Israeli government.
Well, I mean, they better be careful trying to get that aid in there. People might call them pampered. God forbid. So,
Um,
uh,
but in the long run, I'm optimistic. I'm sure that in the long run, our alternative will prevail. I'm sure about it. The question is how much blood is going to be spilled, how much people are going to suffer before it is admitted that there's no other way but the way of ending the occupation and reaching a just peace, right? There is a symbiosis. In order to make Israeli lives better, Palestinian life must be better. We'll do our best to make this day come as soon as possible. I wish she kind of mentioned, well, I think he says it here. It won't happen tomorrow, but with the pressure of the international community, with our insistence against the current administration, and against the persecution we face. As you know, I was suspended from the Knesset for 45 days, and my friend and comrade Ada Toma Simeon was suspended a few weeks ago for 2 months, and another Palestinian member of the Knesset, Iman Katif Yassin, was suspended for 1 month.
the Knesset, for those who don't know, is like their Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are under persecution, but we shall never surrender and give up. We will continue our struggle for the benefit of both peoples, of the land, of Palestinians and Israelis, of Arabs and Jews, of everyone. I'm sure that we will win eventually. I'm just afraid of how many people are going to pay the highest price. So yeah. So fortunately, we do have some not dicks in the Knesset. But it's funny, like this is the first time that we're hearing like this dissent.
Yeah.
And why isn't he highlighted in media? Like, why? Especially since he contacted Bernie directly. Like, why isn't Bernie like pushing this guy and being like, look, here's someone in the Knesset who's calling for a ceasefire. Why don't we follow and take his lead? But I guess, of course, AIPAC and the Israeli lobby is way too powerful that even Bernie is cucking out to that.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
I mean, he's, if you haven't figured that guy out by now, good luck. Like, electoral politics shit. So yeah. Anyway, let us know what you think. Do these things, like and subscribe. Please share. We're heavily suppressed, as many of our brothers and sisters are. So we appreciate sharing directly with friends. Make sure to leave a comment down the doobly-doo. Help us get to 2K. We're getting there. We see you subbing. We appreciate you. So keep doing that till you see 2K subs down there. So yeah.
Anyone on Rockfin or
I can look. There was someone on Rumble. Wishigo said free Julian Assange. We're about to get to that. And no one on Rockfin yet that is chatting, at least. So appreciate the not fake view on Rumble. Look at you. Look at you go. So anyway, you ready for the next one?
I do want to highlight, before we go, I do want to highlight what Doesn't Matter sent in the chat. And he said, I appreciate that video of Kwame Ture explaining that Palestine needs liberation, peace. Once liberation is achieved, then peace can come. Yeah, I think after thinking about it, it took me a minute to kind of process through that. But yeah, I think it's the idea of liberation in the broadest sense means economic wellness, I would say, like encompassing. So if Palestinians are not doing well economically. That's what we need to be focused on in terms of making sure that they are self-sufficient. Thanks, Reef,
Yep.
for highlighting his tweet. Actually his chat. But
Well, look at
which
that.
is obviously
Tony Bananas finally able to catch a live stream. Appreciate you, Tony Bananas. Good looking out.